Hi folks, and welcome to Monday's Holy Week reflection. Yesterday was Palm Sunday, and of course Jesus entered Jerusalem. So let me just begin with the reading today, and I have to, in a sense, deal with the last verse that deals with Jesus on the Sunday. And it's Mark chapter 11, verse 11. Jesus entered Jerusalem and went into the temple courts. He looked around at everything, but since it was already late, he went out to Bethany with the 12. The next day, as they were leaving Bethany, Jesus was hungry. Seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to find out if it had any fruit. When he reached it, he found nothing but leaves, because it was not the season for figs. Then he said to the tree, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard him say it. On reaching Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple courts and began driving out those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves, and would not allow anyone to carry merchandise through the temple courts. And as he taught them, he said, "Is it not written, 'My house will be called a house of prayer for all nations'? But you have made it a den of robbers." The chief priests and the teachers of the law heard this and began looking for a way to kill him, for they feared him because the whole crowd was amazed at his teaching. When evening came, Jesus and his disciples went out of the city. In the morning, as they went along, they saw the fig tree withered from the roots. Peter remembered and said to Jesus, "Rabbi, look, the fig tree you cursed has withered." So here we have the famous account of Jesus in the temple. What we have to realise is this isn't a temper tantrum by Jesus. You will note that on the Sunday evening, he went to the temple courts and had a look around. We talked before about Jesus organising his entry into Jerusalem on the donkey. And here we have him almost on a reconnaissance mission. He's reconnoitring the joint, as it were. He goes to the temple late in the afternoon just to have a look around, contemplating what's going to take place the following day. Once again, Jesus is in control. He knows what he's doing. He has a plan, and that plan is in tune with his sense of destiny. So it's not a temper tantrum in the temple, or a temple tantrum. It wasn't a red rag to a bull moment. This was calculated, it was deliberate, and obviously very, very symbolic. We have the strange story of the fig tree, and the temple incident is framed before and after by the fig tree story. So what we have here is very much an acted parable. It's a parable, but it's actually acted out. And it's all about bearing fruit. The fig tree wasn't bearing fruit. And the theme of bearing fruit is all the way through the scriptures. What God wants of nations and peoples, institutions, and even individuals, that through his grace they bear fruit. Things to do with character and behaviour, and the way that that can shape and alter the world around. And that's the figure of speech, bearing fruit, God's fruit in this world. Now, please remember, this is not an anti-Jewish story, because Jesus was Jewish. Unfortunately, because of anti-Semitism, and unfortunately the Christian church's involvement in anti-Semitism, we sometimes see, or it has been seen, as an attack on Judaism, the temple incident. But it wasn't. This was intra-Jewish. Jesus was Jewish. And the Jewish temple, in so many ways, represents ambiguity. And to understand that, we've got to realise that there are three groups of people that make up what we call the Old Testament. Firstly, the priests, who taught the people what the law was and how they should behave. We then had the prophets, who had God's message. And they often clashed with the priests because they sometimes saw the temple and the priests as not fulfilling their mission, but looking after themselves. So there's that clash in the Old Testament. Then you have the wisdom teachers, who in a sense were a bit aloof from both of these, and they too had a different slant on it. So there's debate and dialogue within the Jewish tradition between these different strands. And at the time of Jesus, we had different groupings. The Sadducees were in charge of the temple, and they realised that they had to collaborate with Rome or there could be devastation, and that's what they did. The Pharisees thought, well, let's just live a holy life as much as possible, follow the law, and they were quite, in a sense, holy, but to the point of curtailing individual freedom and being a straitjacket for people. Then there were the Zealots. They were like the revolutionaries of the day. Let's rise up against Rome and kick them out. Then there were the Essenes, those who decided, no, let's withdraw from it all. They went away down to the caves at Qumran, near the Dead Sea, where they waited for the end to come and had nothing to do with the society at large. And Jesus was different from all of them. But his critique was very clear. The monarchy and the temple were ambiguous in Jewish history because both had good points and bad points. There was a sense of God's accommodation to human beings because they didn't quite get it. So even God's plan had to be adjusted. That's why the monarchy was given. The people wanted a king to be like everybody else. And so the monarchy came about in ancient Israel and was blessed by God. But it wasn't his first choice, obviously, from the scriptures. And the temple, of course, came as a result of the monarch. It was Solomon's temple. And throughout Jewish history, there was an ambiguity there. So too at the time of Jesus. So it wasn't just Jesus who had a problem with the temple. There were many other people within the Jewish situation who had reservations about what was going on. So what we have here is almost like a symbolic acted out destruction of the temple. It's a prophecy. Jesus obviously in other passages, for example in Luke, foresaw the end of the temple, it being destroyed, of course, by the Romans later on. And in a sense, what he was doing was drawing attention to the fact that the temple was heading for destruction. So first, it was a critique of those who ruled the temple because of their lavish lifestyle and how they bought in to the imperial system along with Rome and oppressed the people. But secondly, it was in a sense a critique of the revolutionaries who wanted to fight the Romans. Because interestingly, the quote from Jeremiah about a den of thieves is better translated a cave of brigands. And a brigand was a revolutionary at the time of Jesus. So it's not just a den of thieves. It's not like there was corruption, although there was elements of that in the temple, but it's more than that. It was a critique of the revolutionaries. So here we have Jesus opposing two things: the oppression, the system of imperialism that oppressed the poor, and the temple was part of that. But also those who were in opposition to the temple authorities, who had this extreme nationalism and wanted to use the sword. And Jesus was condemning them too and taking a road in between. So in a sense, it was about the fact that this institution was not bearing fruit and therefore was under God's judgment. And that's a challenge for each and every one of us, because throughout history, the church has been like the temple, where we've got things so wrong. And we as individuals can be the same. Are we bearing fruit? God's fruit? And that's a challenge for you and me. Thank you for listening. God bless you.